Well, look what we have here. Saturday, January 21st, the divisional playoffs start. It starts today. Hello, everybody. It's me, Bob Harris, senior editor, footballdiehards.com. Hope everyone's having a great week and ready for an exciting weekend of football. Maybe the most exciting weekend? What do you guys think? Is the divisional playoff weekend the best weekend? Because it's like, 2 games a day. We still get 2 days of football. They're pretty good games, pretty exciting situations. We'll see if all of them play out well, but I'm looking forward to this weekend. Again, love watching the postseason football. It's fantastic to get to watch the games with not like fantasy football style, but more NFL fan style. Look, we're still playing fantasy. I still got my lineups in. I'm sure you'll have your lineups in. But it just seems like an ideal situation to sit back, watch the games, enjoy the ebb and flow, get a little feel for the strategy. Something I feel like I miss out on a little bit. Watching live football, you maybe catch a little bit of it watching the condensed games after the fact, but nothing like watching live football in the moment and kind of getting a feel for what's going on. We'll go through those games today. Might start taking a look at some of the free agents, some of the coming free agents. Who might be of interest to us as fantasy managers, and maybe some possible destinations, or maybe some of them aren't going anywhere at all. We'll see. A lot of news out there this week about Lamar Jackson situation. There are a lot of coordinators getting the axe, right? And one of them was Greg Roman in Baltimore. Didn't necessarily get the axe. They mutually decided to part ways, and good for them. Kind of the offense that seemed to have stagnated a lot this year, mostly because there was no Lamar Jackson, and that's the other big storyline for this team. What is the future of Lamar Jackson? A lot of interesting things going on there. I mean, obviously he wants a fully guaranteed contract. That seems to have been a sticking point up to this point. I don't think anyone in the NFL wants any more of these fully guaranteed contracts. Quarterback contracts have been negotiated since his, Kyler Murray's, for example. He'll get a lot of guaranteed money, but the Ravens have, avenues. They can franchise tag him, transition tag him, depending on what they want to do and what they feel other teams might do. The exclusive tag will cost them like about $45 million, depending on the final cap this year. We'll get those numbers soon enough, and we'll see what happens. The non-exclusive tag maybe is an opportunity. Will someone offer a couple first-round picks and pay him that money? Probably. The Ravens would get a chance to match that. The transition tag, they could do that. So, but either way, I think Lamar Jackson will be back with the Ravens. Saw some interesting comments. Good morning, Wendy Early. Thank you for coming today. Pleasure to see you again. And again, I'll be taking all your questions throughout here. So, if you want to start throwing those in the chat, feel free. I'll be asking for your input as well. I'm curious your thoughts on some of these issues. Do you think Lamar Jackson will be a Raven in 2023? And we'll talk about him and some of the other players that are going to be available in free agency or just generally available for maybe some change. Like that's a big part of the fun of the offseason, right? The intrigue and the speculation that goes along with player movement or players not moving, coaching changes, etc. Head coaching hires. There's a lot of interviews going on. I feel like the log jam will break when Sean Payton makes the decision, and maybe that'll come soon. Maybe not. I mean, I think probably early next week seems like we're getting there. The Carolina Panthers still want to talk to Sean Payton, and they had to delay a little bit. Had the owner of that team, David Tepper, owns a soccer franchise as well, and they had a death on that team, a boating accident. It's a horrible thing. So they've delayed some of the interviews, and one of those is Sean Payton. So Payton's interviewed with a number of teams: the Cardinals, the Texans, the Broncos, and it sounds like Russell Wilson actually reached out and said, "Man, come coach me." Russell Wilson seems determined to turn things around. What do you guys think? Can Russell Wilson turn it around? Is it over for Russell Wilson, or was it just a blip on what's been a pretty stellar radar? I would suggest in Russell Wilson's case, there's a reason the Seahawks were willing to let him move on. Maybe they saw signs of some of the things that became more apparent in Denver. But the last 3 games, he looked kind of good. Just enough to at least give people hope, right? And make you think, wow, or at least make the Broncos feel like that money they sunk, the sunk cost is not as sunk as maybe it could have been, right? So it'll be interesting to see the coaching hires there. I've talked about this a little bit before, and you hear me talk about it on the radio. By the way, the radio today, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time, it'll be me and Michael Fabiano, joining me. Mike Dempsey will be covering the Jaguars. That game starts while we're on the air, of the show. So we'll be on from 3 to 5. Game kicks off at 4:30 Eastern time. We'll preview that game. I'll preview some of these games here as well, all 4 of them actually. And there'll be some interesting there. Look, I was kind of like working on some columns and whatnot this week, and it seemed like there are. It's hard to find players I'm not willing to play this week, and my lineups reflect that. I was looking. I was setting some lineups last night. I just thought there's really no one I can't play. And that's right. That includes T.Y. Hilton, much to Mike Dempsey's dismay. He's very cheap. Noah Brown, cheaper. Anyway. Wendy Early wants to know what I feel okay with Purdy in a dynasty or Lance. So I think this is interesting. I was going to get to this, and I'm glad you brought it up, Wendy, because I think it is something that's, to me, my feeling is I don't think they're going away from Brock Purdy. Mike Dempsey, my co-host on Sirius, is quick to remind, though, that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't get them to the Super Bowl, got them into the postseason, didn't get them to the Super Bowl, and they were willing to make a change to Trey Lance, etc. So yes, they really are pushing hard for the Super Bowl, but I don't think they go back to Trey Lance at this point. And if they don't, what's his future with the team? Is it in a different place? Is it in a different place with a general manager just hired away from San Francisco, a place called Tennessee, where Rand Cawthorn is now the GM, and where Malik Willis, let's see. I think it's safe to say the Titans think that experiment, the Malik Willis experiment, if it didn't fail, is way in the early stages when they started Joshua Dobbs over him the final 2 games. I mean, they had a decision that last game. They could have just started either one of them, Dobbs or Malik Willis, and they went with Dobbs because it gave him a better chance to win in their estimation. So maybe that's just more an indication of where Willis is or isn't at in his development. But with the new GM, and he talked about this, Rand Cawthorn, yesterday about Ryan Tannehill. They owe him some money. It is probably, it would be ideal to stick with Tannehill, but it's like not outside the realm of possibility. They could move on. I think it cost them like $18 million in cap space to move on. Cap's going up all the time. So I think Purdy is the guy. And so to that point, I saw Michael Silver, who, is pretty connected in the Bay Area, right? Formerly with NFL and SI, pretty well connected dude anyway. A local, outlet in San Francisco tweeted out that, people, be realistic. This is Brock Purdy's team now. Trey Lance, and barring some massive offseason developments, Brock Purdy is the start of this team going forward. And Michael Silver retweeted that with the comment, he has talked to people in the building, this week, and they say that it's Purdy. And, the circumstances sometimes change for teams, right? I mean, they were all in on Trey Lance, clearly, right? Put in a lot of draft capital to land him, secure his services. Came out and it wasn't great. He gets hurt. Another guy turns up, and Brock Purdy. And I think it's fair at this point to bring up some of the numbers that Nick Wagner put out from ESPN this week, which I thought were pretty impressive for Purdy. The first rookie quarterback to win a playoff game since Russell Wilson in 2012. And if you remember, Russell Wilson came in not highly regarded, coming into draft. I mean, certainly a good career and everything, but they had just signed Matt Flynn, formerly of the Packers, to a huge contract. And you just heard the language start changing this summer when Pete Carroll started talking about it being a competition. Wait a minute, what? They didn't pay Matt Flynn all that money to compete. They paid him that money to start, but Russell Wilson forced his way in. And that started a blueprint, right, of teams going with younger quarterbacks on their rookie contracts that allow them to build around them. And it's been a winning formula for a number of teams. Like San Francisco is set for that either way, right? Because they're not hugely invested, both Purdy and Lance, on rookie contracts. But Purdy became the first rookie quarterback to win a playoff game since Russell Wilson in 2012. At 23 years, 18 days, he's the youngest player in the NFL with 300-plus passing yards and 3 touchdown passes in a playoff game, surpassing Dan Marino, by the way. And Marino, by the way, is the reason Purdy wears number 13. Big fan. Purdy is the third player in NFL history with 300-plus yards and at least 4 total touchdowns in his playoff debut. He joins Matthew Stafford in 2011 and Kurt Warner in 1999 with that distinction. With a streak of 7 consecutive games with multiple passing touchdowns, Purdy tied Justin Herbert for the longest streak by a rookie in NFL history. It's also tied with Steve Young for the second longest streak in 49ers history. He became the first player taken in the final pick of the NFL draft in the Common Era to record a postseason touchdown of any kind. Like, he's been lights out. He's been fantastic. So to answer your question, I mean, I would feel okay. I would feel okay with Purdy. I hope none of us are sitting there leaning on him as the primary asset. But if we were, I mean, and he holds the job, and I think that's the only question mark, right? Is our uncertainty over the longer term future for him. But I think we'll get answers pretty quickly. And for sure, in my prediction, I'm predicting the 49ers are going to go to the Super Bowl. If that's the case, there's no way that Brock Purdy isn't the starter. I don't see any way he's not the starter now. Sometimes the skill set and abilities and the mindset of a player. Good morning, Albert. Thanks for coming. The mindset of a player and his approach to the game just is kind of a tongue and groove fit for the coaching staff, the scheme. And it's kind of interesting. We've seen things in the past in San Francisco that kind of suggest the coaching staff and the scouting people maybe a little bit at odds. Now, I don't think this is the case in this, but it was the case with Trey Sermon, right? Where the scouting people loved Trey Sermon, the coaching people loved Elijah Mitchell, right? So clearly the coaches saw something in Brock Purdy. I mean, or they found something of Brock Purdy. Whether they saw it or the scouting department saw it, I guess, is irrelevant at this point. The fact that he landed there, I know Mike Dempsey works. Hello, Scott. Mike Dempsey works with someone who trains with Brock Purdy and works with his people, and their belief was you get down to the end of the draft and players don't want to get drafted, right? They want their choice. They want to be able to have the freedom to sign with the team. Oftentimes, the bonuses get a little better when teams are competing for you at that level in that undrafted free agent pool the day after the draft. And he said that, Purdy was ecstatic when the 49ers took him. While most players would have preferred to have their options open, he was ecstatic. He and his people felt like he was a great fit for the scheme, and they were eager to play for the coaching staff. By the way, that coaching staff, very popular. There are a lot of people from that coaching staff move on to bigger jobs. Whether it's the McVay tree, the Shanahan tree, they both emanate from the same, group together in Washington back in the day. Went through Atlanta together, a lot of them. It seems like a lot of these sharp young coaches who are having a great deal of success come from this tree anyway. So, and maybe another one this year in DeMeco Ryans. So we'll see. Scott would like to know who my big DFS play for this weekend is. You guys know, I mean, if you read some of my columns this week, my DFS 3 and out. I mean, for tournament plays, I'm all in on Gabe Davis. Playoff Gabe is not regular season Gabe, and we've had this discussion many times. Those of you who are regulars know I'm not big on regular season Gabe. Regular season Gabe's kind of a downer. Postseason Gabe is a whole different story, right? He's done phenomenal things. The numbers bear that out, and last week's performance bears it out. These are tournament plays, though, for cash plays. I don't think he's, I'm not sure I'm making him a cash play. I play mostly tournaments, people. And when I say mostly, I play it entirely. But, I mean, head-to-head. You want to play it a little safer. But Davis, 6 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown last week against Miami. In his previous playoff outing, you'll all remember. The thing that we all overdrafted him on, 4-touchdown game and 42-36 overtime loss to Kansas City. Mike Giardi pointed out this week only 3 quarterback wide receiver duos have more playoff TV connections in a 2-season span than Josh Allen and Davis. That's Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. They're very good. They have 11. Kurt Warner and Larry Fitzgerald. They have 9. Terry Bradshaw and John Stallworth, 78-79. They have 7. So it's been really good, right? The postseason, 20 catches, 440 yards, and 6 touchdowns in 6 career postseason games. By the way, I know Tom Brady and Gronk are up in that group as well, but not wide receiver. Gronk's not wide receiver. Anyway, I like him. I think, so... And I'm pretty keen on Miles Sanders, who, seems like the perfect tournament play. You look at his numbers this year, he has 23 games of 25 fantasy points or more, one of them coming against the Giants in week 14, 155 total yards, pair of touchdowns on 18 touches. Al Zeidenfeld noted he had 144 yards rushing in that game. 110 of them came before first contact. So they blocked it up. Lane Johnson will be back. But in the 14 games, he was held to fewer than 25 points this season. Sanders averaged 8.9 points a game. And that's always my problem with Sanders is I love the upside, love what he's capable of. Why don't the coaches love him as much as I do? And like he told us before the season, don't draft me, right? He's tired of our nonsense. So us fantasy managers dogging him. But it's an interesting play. I think Deebo Samuel showed his upside as well. I think safe plays. I mean, the locked play, the chalk of all chalks is going to be Christian McCaffrey, right? Because that seems like the safest play of all. I'm interested to see what Brock Purdy does against the Dallas defense. I'll kind of run through these games a little bit here, Scott. But kind of, I mean, if I'm playing, if you said you can only play one person this weekend, you have a one player lineup. It's Christian McCaffrey, and we'll all tie with Christian McCaffrey. Scott Kobe thinks the Bengals might give extra attention to the playoff game and try to shut him down. I think that's not sure, but then what are you going to, I don't think you can do that at the expense of turning Stephon Diggs loose, right? So I think they have to be careful. Is there anyone coming? So Brian Larkin, I appreciate the question. I don't get into the draft until after the season, and I apologize for that. I am not a draftnik. I do know some really good draftniks, and I will have some of them, including Matt Waldman, on this live stream in the coming weeks to kind of set the table for that. I'm covering the NFL. I'm not watching college. I'm not scouting those players. I mean, I'm familiar with who's coming in and everything, but I'm not at the point where I could say, oh, this guy is great, this guy's not great. So I don't want to try and sit here and pretend I'm doing that, because I'm not. I'm watching the NFL during the season. The Bengals have issues right in the offensive line. Let's just run through the games real quick and just kind of set the table on these. Weather shouldn't be an issue anywhere. I think Jaguars Chiefs is going to be cold because it's Kansas City and it's January. 38% chance to rain, 38 degrees. So Giants Eagles, 4% chance of rain, 38 degrees. Seems like that'll be just fine. Football weather. Bengals at Bills, 34 degrees, 70% chance of snow. Don't know how heavy it will be. Just cold temperatures, though, don't scare me off games. Neither does snow. Scott Kobe knows I fear no snow, even a lot of snow. And then the Cowboys 49ers, I know there's been a lot of rain in California, so that was a little bit of a concern for me. 52 degrees, 3% chance of rain, so everything should be just fine there. So weather won't be a big factor in any of these games. But going to the Jaguars Chiefs, 52.5 point over-under. I love that. Like a lot of points. We saw it. I know, I want to say ESPN. I want to say who was it? Was it Michael DeRocco is predicting a 10 touchdown pass game combined between the two quarterbacks. Really? He has my attention. That would be phenomenal. And look, Pat Mahomes himself threw 4 in this game the last time. When was that? Week 10. Let me look. Let's bring up the numbers for the Jaguars. Bring up the numbers for that game. Trevor Lawrence threw 2. Mahomes threw 4. They're 6. They're like 2/3 of the way there. Okay. Big game for Christian Kirk for the Jaguars in that one. Zay Jones had a pretty good game, but Christian Kirk had the 2 touchdown game, so pretty solid outing. 12 targets, caught 9 of them, 105 yards. Zay Jones, 8 of 10 targets, 68 yards. Marvin Jones, minimal use. Evan Engram was the piece they weren't using as much, or they didn't use as much then, and his kind of run has come subsequent to that, and he's been phenomenal, right? Or mostly high end. Had some single digit games in there. On the other side, Mahomes, 331 yards, 4 touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco ran really well, 5 yards a carry. Travis Etienne, by the way, 11 carries, 45 yards. Not as keen on him this week. Kadarius Toney, that was like one of his first showings as a Chief. He did have a touchdown, I believe, in that game, I want to say. Let me look. Yeah, he had a touchdown. Caught 4 passes, 57 yards. Also had a couple carries for 33 yards. I like the way they're using him. I think he's a viable tournament play. Travis Kelce, 6 for 81. Valdez Scantling, 60 yards receiving on 3 catches. So Jerick McKinnon was not as much of a factor, but he was starting to come on at that point. 6 catches, 56 yards in that game. Jerick McKinnon, I'm playing him probably. Okay, I said probably, and that's like a total lie. Totally playing him. I've been on him, for a little while now. You guys have heard me talk about him a little bit. Let's look at his December or last 6 games of the season, right? Had at least one receiving touchdown every game. There were a pair of contests where he had 2. So 27 catches, 274 yards, 8 touchdowns over that 6-game span, final 6 weeks from week 10 on. So that kind of started his run, or week 12 on. I'm sorry. He also rushed for 142 yards with a TD. The thing about him, finished second on the team, by the way, to Travis Kelce, 9 receiving touchdowns total to 12. The thing about him is he clearly has the trust of Andy Reid, right? When you pay your quarterbacks $500 million, right? You want have guys in there who can pass, protect, and do the things you want them to do. So I think he's a piece in there that's worth playing. So I think Isaiah Pacheco's worth paying. Travis Kelce, you're obviously also playing. Beyond that, I think I'm interested in playing Kadarius Toney. Let me know if any of you have any skepticism about that. The Kadarius Toney, I think for tournaments, not for cash games, obviously. Cash games, you're playing the cash game guys, right? Pat Mahomes. Making sure this is not actual news. It's not actual news. A lot of notifications that turn out not to be news. So I think, could play Toney. I'm not eager to play those wide receivers on the Chiefs. Juju is, doesn't seem like a huge upside guy, so not sure about that. Again, it's a shallow pool. It's 4 games played, so everyone is an option. I'm just thinking of the ideal plays here. So looking at the other side of the ball, I could play Trevor Lawrence. The pricing is not exorbitant on him. I think it could be a game where he's forced to try to play catch up again. Oh, the Giants team hotel has no water. No showers. I think they'll be okay. It's not debilitating. Trevor Lawrence is fine. Travis Etienne, I think he's a little... I don't like the price versus what I expect the production to be. I think he gets fine volume. I don't know if I see huge upside there. Maybe in a head-to-head kind of play where you're just hoping the volume, you're just trying to keep up, maybe, but probably not. Okay playing Kirk, okay playing Zay Jones, okay playing Evan Ingram, of course. So I think all those players are in play, and hoping they hit that somewhere in that over-under range would be fantastic, right? Looking beyond that, the Giants and Eagles tonight. The Giants, no showers. I think they'll be okay. The over-under there, the implied total here, 48 points. Philadelphia, 7.5-point favorite in this one. Jalen Hurts, will he run? That seems to be the question. I want to say, is the over-under on that? I want to say 50-something, 52, 50, I want to say 52 yards. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he didn't run much last week. Notice that if you watch them, they put out film of a drill where they were all kind of running out of a set, and they kind of did a somersault on the ground. He was very cautious. I don't know. We'll see. He's off the injury report, and I guess we'll see how he responds to contact. He's certainly off the injury report, and that doesn't mean you're 100% healthy. Daniel Jones, coming off a great game, we're going to all imply that. Mike Dempsey would like us to remember that 3 of his games his 3 300-yard games. 2 of them were against the Vikings. 1 were against the Detroit Lions. But I think his rushing upside is there. I think for a cheap play, he's fine. I'm not playing Hurts just because I think some of the other options I'm paying up for are not hurt going into the game, or at least 100% healthy. And, whatever they're saying him off the injury report, he's not 100% healthy, I don't think. So not against him. Look, I think there's upside there. Last game was not indicative of, nobody was playing in that game for the Giants. So don't put too much on that last game. I want to say that was week 18. And they had played just previous to that, was maybe a little more indicative of what we could expect there. The week 14 game is, the Eagles ran roughshod. That was a huge game for Miles Sanders, as I mentioned previous to that. Let me bring up the numbers here so I can see. Daniel Jones, 169 yards passing, 1 TD. He ran for 26 yards and had a TD there, so that kind of saved his day. Jalen Hurts, 217 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, had a touchdown run in that game as well. Miles Sanders had the 2 touchdowns. Boston Scott, that's his giant, the giant killer. Boston Scott had a touchdown. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith had touchdowns. So, I mean, plenty to like here. Dallas Goedert back in the mix at this time, so he'll be a factor. I think he's a little highly priced for my liking. Saquon Barkley did not have a good game in that Week 14 outing. 9 for 28. Had just 2 catches. I think he's played better though, and since that game, I recall he was a little beat up at that point in time. So that's something to be mindful of. So Jalen Hurts. So Scott, probably I just now saw the question, but probably that's an issue for me, right? I don't think it concerns me, but I can kind of avoid it pretty easily. I like a lot of the other players here, so I don't think that. I mean, if I felt like I don't have any lineups with Hurts in them, I'll just say that, because I think some of the other pieces there. I don't have a lot of lineups. I do have lineups for Joe Burrow, but I'm not as keen on him for reasons we'll talk about, offensive line. So just paying higher or paying lower than Hurts right now seems just fine with me. And we'll go with DraftKings pricing for the moment, just because that's a little, I think it's indicative. We've got Hurts, Mahomes at 9,200, Hurts at 9,000, Josh Allen at 9,000. I'd rather play Josh Allen. Joe Burrow at 8, Trevor Lawrence 76, Prescott 7,500, Daniel Jones 7,400, Brock Purdy 7,000. So in the lineups, I'm not trying to get Mahomes and Travis Kelce both on the same lineup. I mean, I'm looking at cheaper options there. Like Josh Allen's one of them. So I'm kind of not avoiding Hurts, but didn't play him. And, if you're looking for excuses, I mean, right. Like, this is something we used to split hairs during the season, right? Like, okay, he's not on the injury report, but he's not healthy. This guy is healthy. I think they're both kind of equal in value. The matchups, aren't huge difference makers for me, so maybe I just play the healthier player. That seems like not an unreasonable approach. So in that game, by the way, I'm pretty much playing, I'll play Barkley. He's pretty expensive. I think he'll have a better game. As I mentioned, I like Miles Sanders. He's a much cheaper option. And with tons of upside, right? 5,700 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel if you want to play there. And tons of upside, but also tons of risk, I think, because of his usage. It's just been uneven. You think back to that week, I want to say Week 15 game against Chicago, where the Bears hadn't stopped any runners, and here comes Miles Sanders, 1,000-yard rusher at that time, one of the few in the league. I think ranked 5th in the league in rushing at that point. Had 11 touchdowns, and they just didn't run them. Hi, John. Thank you. They just didn't, and then that just seems to be the bugaboo with Miles Sanders. He didn't get the ball, didn't touch the football in that game until the second quarter. So go figure. And I ask as a joke, and it's not even a joke, but just kind of half kidding to every beat writer who comes on the Eagles. Why don't the Eagles love Miles Sanders as much as we love Miles Sanders? It's just a weird question. Anyway, play him. I will play him in tournaments. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, perfectly suitable. Dallas Goedert, I don't have any shares, but I think, I think his workload is sufficient as well. Maybe would prefer him to Dalton Schultz, who I don't think is going to duplicate that 2-touchdown game. It's a much tougher matchup against the San Francisco linebackers this week, I think, who are much better pass defenders than Tampa Bay were. So other piece in that game, the Giants receiving core. I mean, pick your poison. I've been on Isaiah Hodgins all along until last week. I went Richie James, and I regret it still. So I might be sticking with Hodgins, but all good pay down options, including Darius Slayton. Daniel Bellinger, not much interested in, but if you have a piece that, if you need to make something work, Daniel Bellinger is very cheap. He's got that going for him. Moving ahead to the Sunday games, Bengals Bills, exciting game, the rematch. We all, 3 weeks since the DeMar Hamlin thing. So both teams are coming into this game with winning streaks. 9 straight wins for the Bengals, 8 straight wins for the Bills. So good there. Bills 4-0 in home playoff series under Sean McDermott. And the Bengals won 2 playoff road games in 2021. So they're perfectly good there. Josh Allen has been a problem, right, with the turnovers, right? He has led the league in turnovers during the regular season with 19. So that's not good. They need to cut down on that. So Cincinnati will be working on that. The receivers, the high-end receivers here, I love. I could play either one. I'm on Jamar Chase, 9 straight games with at least 7 catches. Stephon Diggs has 300-yard receiving games in the playoffs with the Bills. Playoff Gabe is in effect here. Like some of the other pieces, Dawson Knox is on a roll. He and Hayden Hurst both cheap options. So here's the elephant in the room is the offensive line issues for the Bengals, and for how long have we been telling people that offensive lines matter? Because they do matter, right? You're down 3 offensive linemen, Alex Kappa, the guard, and Jonas Williams out. Kappa's been out a little bit, and also Lyle Collins, who's been out since December. So they've kind of figured that out. I talked to Joe Pisapia from Fantasy Pros last night, and I heard him talk about some of the same things I heard talked about on NFL Network yesterday, where basically the notion is that they have pretty good reserves, right? I mean, they're not Eagles levels depth, but they've got guys. They're not just guys off the street. So I guess that's good. I guess it's good that they're not just guys off the street, but it's also good that they're not the starters, right? So I mean, guys start for a reason. They're better players. So I have a little concern. Joe Burrow's been fantastic and fantastic under pressure, doing all the right things. So I'm not. I do have a lineup with him. So it's not like I've shied away totally, but I have a lot of lineups. So I think the only quarterbacks I'm not playing this week is probably Jalen Hurts. I don't have any of them. So I don't know if I have any Dak. I have to look. And I probably should have some Dak, right? Because it's easy to throw against San Francisco. I think CD Lamb's a great play this week. John, we'll have to get you to come in here. By the way, Brian Larkin asking about the rookies. If you could throw that in the chat, who are you paying the most attention to, John, in this rookie class? I mean, everyone's, I think there are names out there that we're all, Bryce Young is a name we're all interested in. But who do you got, John? Give me maybe some of your top guys at each position, or one top guy at each position. John Laub, Football Diehards, Fantrax, him, does all the great rookie content for our site as well. So he'll be on this program. You can count on that in the coming weeks. Getting back to the games. We have one left. Oh, who am I playing here? The Bengals, can play Joe Burrow. Not really interested in Joe Mixon. Sorry, he's a little expensive. There are cheaper pieces I like just fine. Those offensive linemen down worry me. They don't worry you. That's okay. But not as interested in T. Higgins. Not as interested in Tyler Boyd. The Chase has been dominating the targets here, right? Since his return from injury, he's up well over 30%. It's just seems like an easy play there. On the other side, I think you play the guys, Allen, Diggs. I'm okay playing playoff game. Running backs, pick your poison. I know Eric Romoff made the same case on the DFS live stream. You can go watch the replay of that on the YouTube channel, by the way, with he and Jamie Calandro. Jamie Calandro will be on the Football Diehards radio program today as well. But the argument was, James Cook is the one we remember most because he had the touchdown last, so more people will be on him, and so he's pivoting to Singletary. I kind of did the same thing, independently of him. Of his discussion, and kind of for the same reason, just feels like it's totally random in this backfield. The difference though is that Cooks is like a few $100s cheaper, so you gain a little ground there. So playing all those guys, and then you can play whoever you want on Buffalo. That's the thing about Buffalo to me. If you have, I want to take a shot on Isaiah McKenzie, sure. Cole Beasley, why not? Khalil Shakir, sure. Dawson Knox, I think, is a solid play. He's got a little bit of a touchdown roll, so. Cowboys at 49ers, 46.5 point over under. So we'll see how that scoring is. I laid out at the top of this discussion all the greatness of that is Brock Purdy. He's amazing. Brock Purdy, put all those numbers out there. Dak Prescott coming off a huge game, obviously, has great weapons in CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz and whoever else shows up. I think that's great. It's hard to run against this team, so we're all dialed back on Ezekiel Elliott, I think. Tony Pollard, though, gets the ball in space. I think he's a playable commodity and not unreasonably priced. If you remember 2 years ago against with Ezekiel Elliott, a rare miss was Tony Pollard's first start, and he was phenomenal in that game 2 years ago in Dallas. So something like there. You're playing Christian McCaffrey. You're playing George Kittle if you want. You're playing Deebo Samuel. I like him a lot as a tournament play. We saw the huge upside. I think Brock Purdy navigating the pass rush, I think, is the big issue, right? I mean, the pressure rates are. Let me bring that up here. Micah Parsons led all defenders during the regular season, 74 pressures. Joey Bosa is also very good. But Dallas has been like 39%, led the NFL in pressure percentage, 39%, finished second in sacks per drop back at 8.6%. So Purdy has done well in pressure. ESPN notes he has 4 touchdown passes and no interceptions under pressure since becoming the starter in Week 14, but Dallas will be a challenge for him. I think Dallas is the biggest challenge he's faced so far. So we'll see if he turns up. I mean, Evan is, to this point, suggests he will. So we'll see Dak Prescott, trying to do some of the things they did last week. We'll see CeeDee Lamb, I think, is a great play this week. He should play, he plays inside and outside, running from the inside. He'll be, get some really favorable matchups there as well. So like all those guys, I think you're taking your chances with anyone else. That includes Michael Gallup, although I've heard good cases made for him. And Noah Brown. And I mean, you want to play T.Y. Hilton? Go ahead. I have a lineup with T.Y. Hilton. There's no shame. Well, there is some shame. I feel a little ashamed. Lau throwing out some knowledge in the chat there on his rookie class, and I will get him in. Brian also wondered in all our drafts, and you guys can throw those in the comments as well. The diamond in the rough and our biggest non-injury bust. That's the thing about bust, right? Do you classify guys who are injured? I mean, it's disappointing nonetheless. I'll say Jonathan Taylor got injured, but he was disappointing prior to the injury. He had like one huge game. So that's, that would be one. I think, and I guess DeAndre Swift was disappointing regardless of the injuries, right? The injuries were maybe a reason he was disappointed, or at least why they limit his usage, but it's the usage that was the problem. And it seemed like even when he was healthy, Brian, they weren't like all in on him. So I thought that was a huge disappointment. I'll go with just a personal one for me. One that I expected to do a lot better was Alan Lazard. Thought his relationship, and Aaron Rodgers even talked about it after the season, relationships are important to him. And I thought that would be a bigger factor. But Christian Watson was better than I expected, or maybe had a greater impact than I expected. And so, but for me, I thought Lazard was a guy I was getting a really great value on who just failed miserably. Cortland Sutton, his injuries aside, I thought was a big bust for me. I mean, I think people will be disappointed in Mike Evans, right? Because it was not as many touchdowns as you get. Still a 1,000-yard season, 9th straight 1,000-yard season. But I think for what you paid for him, he was a little bit of disappointment. I'll agree. Multiple comments on Russell Wilson and their huge disappointment. Scott Kobe mentioned that. John Lobb, Wilson sabotaged 3 of my season-long and dynasty teams. It's been tough. I think Devontae Smith ended up being a great play. Scott Kobe pointed out David Njoku, a player I was high on as well. I think Evan Ingram turned into a guy. Geno Smith, John Lobb notes in the comments. I think there was a handful of guys like you can make, Justin Fields. I mean, who came on stronger than Justin Fields? As long as he was on the field, he was a difference-making player. Josh Jacobs, Scott Kobe mentions, is a great value. I think I can remember getting him in the 5th and 6th rounds in some drafts early on, and he far outperformed that value. I wanted to bring up, I have a list of some free agents we'll talk about here in a second. Josh Jacobs on that. Where does he stay? A Raider in Las Vegas. Kyle Pitts, a huge disappointment before the injury. So, I think a lot of the players who end up on this list, but, the disappointment list might have had some injuries. I felt like, Matt Stafford, that was probably injury related. Justin Herbert, I mean, and maybe his was injury related because it was injuries to either his ribs, he played through the rib issue, but also to his receiving core. He didn't have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field a ton. So I'm not, there are a lot of guys, a lot of disappointments, and I've started making my list, Brian, and we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks, and talking about we'll start laying out our top fives by position and kind of get us on point in that in the coming weeks. But it is an interesting topic. I mean, how big a factor were injuries in whether a player was a disappointment or not? Sometimes players get injured that are disappointing beyond the injuries. But Russell Wilson, huge disappointment, maybe the biggest one, I think. I mean, I know people in the industry who thought he might finish as quarterback one. Drake London and Cam Akers down the stretch were phenomenal. Jerick McKinnon down the stretch was phenomenal. Those were league-winning players. Cam Akers and McKinnon. I thought, Kenneth Walker looked like he was heading that way and then kind of hit a rough patch and he got a little beat up, and so that was a bit of an issue. Scott wanted to know, do you foresee a higher scoring game in the Dallas Cowboys game? I don't know that I do, but I think the over-under is probably set about right, 47.5. Wow. John Lobb had a team with Russell Wilson, Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, Kyle Pitts. Man, Breece Hall looked phenomenal, though. Phenomenal. Looking forward to seeing him come back next year. That'll be great. We all suffered a ton of injuries. I mentioned the list of free agents, and I have the complete list, but I saw also a list from my buddy Greg Rosenthal in NFL where he kind of ranks them. And I thought it was interesting. Lamar Jackson, number one, talked about this at the top of the broadcast in case you missed it. I think he's staying put. I think he gets, if they don't agree to terms on a long-term deal, they'll tag him. And I don't, I mentioned the exclusive tag. We don't know the exact numbers yet, but like $45 million for the exclusive tag, and maybe 40, a little north of 40 for the non-exclusive, and less for the transition. But we'll see. But I think he's staying in place, right? I don't think he's going anywhere. I've been surprised before, though, so we'll see. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. Lamar Jackson remains a Baltimore Raven with a new offensive coordinator. Our friend Emory Hunt put out a tweet, when Roman was leaving, saying, don't confuse this. Lamar Jackson doesn't need to play in this kind of, implying it was kind of a gadget or run-heavy offense. He ran a pro-style offense in college. Lamar Jackson retweeted that, by the way, with a thank you on it. So he would agree. He would maybe an indication he wants to throw a little more. I think the issues for Lamar Jackson are just we didn't see him at the end of the season. It adds to the uncertainty in our mind, right? You're sitting there and, we're trying to assess a future of someone who seemed to be on a downward trajectory, right? He was hurt. He didn't come back as soon as we thought. He didn't make the trip to the final game, and maybe a lot of us thought, wow, he should be on the sideline supporting his team. I don't know that he should have been. But I think that's the perception it leaves. And so it kind of leaves us in a sour mood, or leaves a sour haze over a cloud over the situation, when that might not be the case at all. Might be nothing to that at all except our own perception, right? So we have to be mindful of that all the time in these circumstances. We project a lot of emotions, motives, and things that maybe don't actually exist. Geno Smith, I think, will remain a Seattle Seahawk. They've already started talks, and I think he'll be reasonable. He's not going to price himself out of the picture, and just very happy to have the role that he has and the opportunity. And let's face it, he just set a Seahawks franchise record for passing yards, so he played up to it. So there's a reason he's a Pro Bowl quarterback this year. Played really well. Who's next? Tom Brady, I guess, is in the list here. And we'll see. I heard Adam Schefter talking earlier this morning that maybe Tom Brady is, not yet decided what he's going to do. It seems Tampa Bay, the coaching moves they're making kind of suggest that he'll be elsewhere. The Raiders have an obvious opening. There are other teams, the New York Jets, the Tennessee Titans, maybe. Like every NFC South team has an opening, including Tampa Bay. So, maybe that's going to be a factor there. Miami, I don't know. We'll see. Tua put out a cryptic tweet that he kind of filled out a little later on Instagram, kind of, left people wondering with the Twitter post, and then maybe tried to clear up the confusion by clarifying he was looking forward to next season. and not the next chapter. So these kids and their Instagrams and tweets. But Tom Brady will be the player we're watching. Maybe total, wild card out there that we're not thinking of for Tom Brady. But he'll be one of the radar. Saquon Barkley. Sounds like both he and Daniel Jones are going to get extensions. The Giants might wish they had done that at some point earlier this season or just before the season. They didn't. Maybe wish they pick up the fifth-year option, but they didn't. So there's that. Odell Beckham floating around out there. I don't know how interested teams are going to be in him until he shows that he can be on the field. I think Daniel Jones to me is is a case where Brian Dable is turned out to be everything the Giants expected and should be everything fantasy managers hoped for. Right? He seems to be, we all kind of thought, he was a major factor in the development of Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills' success. Look, they've carried that success over, and Josh Allen's going to be good for a while, but the turnovers were a bigger factor this year. Brian Daboll, though, has been a big factor in that team's offensive success, and he's demonstrated his ability this year, I think, with a Giants team that's truly overachieved. And great job by him and that team. And one of the things that seems like has happened is he is he's zoned in. He's honed in on turning Daniel Jones into his next Josh Allen. So I don't know if that means he reaches Josh Allen levels, but I think they're all in on him. So I think he will return to this team. And I think he's a pretty solid play going forward. Like not a high-end play, but an affordable, viable starter, a fantasy starter. If you wait late and you don't want to overpay. Juju Smith-Schuster had a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. We'll see if he sticks around there. I think, again, it's pretty affordable this year. He'll want more money. Jacoby Myers also on the wrist. He seems like he's an underrated fantasy asset, right? And I think he'd be a good fit for most anywhere, but I think New England would like to retain him. He seems like a Patriots kind of player. Tony Pollard will be a free agent. I think the Cowboys will work to keep him. Josh Jacobs, we mentioned earlier, he's talked about remaining a Raider. The Raiders have talked about keeping him at the right price, and this is the problem for running backs. They're going to be looking to, especially a running back in Jacobs' position, has heavy usage. We see what teams value. They don't value running backs. They're not paying running backs the level they're paying other positions, so maybe sticking around will be Josh Jacobs' best answer there. Evan Ingram will be a free agent playing on a 1-year deal, kind of a prove-it deal with the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars will work hard to keep him. Has nearly 200 catches over the last 3 years, so it would make perfect sense. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be out there in the quarterback market. The Colts have been mentioned in the past with him last offseason. Maybe they'll be mentioned again this year. But again, the entire NFC South, Atlanta, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, definitely looking for quarterbacks. And Carolina probably as well. So Dalton Schultz played on the franchise tag this year. You wonder if the Cowboys will pay up. I don't know. I have questions about that. They have a couple of young guys that they like. Mike Gesicki also playing on the franchise tag. Will he stick around? He doesn't seem to be a good fit. So I think he will be moving on. DJ Chark, kind of a 1-year prove-it deal. I think he proved some things in Detroit this year. We'll see if they want to stick around with him. I think probably other teams will be interested, and Jameson Williams might be a factor that has him looking for other outlets there as well. Miles Sanders, a free agent. Again, hopefully he finds a home that loves him as much as we love him. Doesn't have that in Philadelphia right now. There are others out there. Mike White will be a free agent. Seems like the Jets want to swing bigger at the position. So we'll see how that plays out. Great stuff. We're glad to see John Love out there driving some conversation. I wanted to comment on some of his things. The late game input ups. I'm going to make John Love come on this program and say all these things. He's great. Catching up on the comments. DJ Chark to the Chargers. Scott Kobe says could be good. I don't disagree with that. I think Chark, kind of demonstrated he can be that, he can be a field stretcher and be a playmaker. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, John. Appreciate that. And again, John will be coming on here at some point in the coming weeks to discuss all the rookies, and his rookie capsules will show up on the website as well. Does great work. You should follow him on Twitter if you don't already at Gridiron Skull 91 from memory there. John Lobb, the Scala, love him. John Lobb, how long has it been now? How long has it been that we've been working together? Senior Bowl preview in 2 weeks. Mark it down on the calendar, Emo Catholic. John Lobb wants in. John Lobb, how long has it been now? Like since 1990 what? It's been a long time since we've been working with John Lobb. He's been great. And he still is. Where do I see Hopkins being traded to? I know people have talked about the New York Giants a little bit. Okay, the New England Patriots have been mentioned. Okay. I see him being traded. I'm not sure who wants to. John Lobb met Emil in 1994. It's been a long time. Emil is out there working the phones always. I met him like shortly before that, and he was out there working the phones. Emil, very gregarious, reaching out to the fantasy world. Yeah, that's what I thought, John. 1998 or so. Okay. It started doing rankings on the site, and now doing great rookie contributions, and the scholar sheet of DraftKings knowledge every week is something you should all use. I use it regularly, so during the regular season, great stuff there. Other great people on the site as well. Jamie Calandro doing fantastic work. Justin Lanero, Evan Tarciano, Joey Kalana, Matthew Sharon, Brad Cruz, Gary Davenport. Got great stuff on the site. You can go there. It's footballdiehards.com. You can also hear me on the radio. If you aren't familiar with the program, it's called Football Diehards. You can catch it on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Through the rest of this month, our schedule will be Monday, Thursday, Fridays, 10 p.m., Saturdays, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, including today. It'll be me and Michael Fabiano. Jamie will be joining us for a little DFS talk in advance of today's games. Today's kickoff, the early kickoff. So plenty of content there. Fabiano and I will be previewing all the games, maybe talking about some of these free agents, looking ahead to the Super Bowl, etc. So a lot going on. And always the live streams Wednesday and Saturday. I've been doing them a little early on Saturday. I guess next week I may go back to noon. We'll see. Watch the Twitter feed. Watch your emails. Check the website. It'll tell you what you need to know. Always here to answer questions. And as we get into the offseason, we'll be doing more of these. I know Mike Dempsey and I are already planning our first mock draft Monday night show for the 30th, I want to say that is, right after conference championships. Yes. Monday, January 30th on the Football Diehards. Will be thanks, John. Appreciate you coming today. Scott Kobe wants Dempsey and Fabiano on here or in one of our mocks. That will happen. But yeah, an entire off season of content ahead, people. We don't call it the off season; we call it the alter season because, man, we keep working. Brian Larkin, you pointed it out with 2 questions. What are we doing? Who are the disappointments? We start working on our magazine content. And by the way, Fantasy Football Pro Forecast. This will be our 31st year. Oh my gosh. Also the Cheat Sheets magazine, Draft Book magazine, and Football Diehards magazine. So we'll start working on that content, and a lot of that content will spin over into these discussions to keep you involved and in the mix and interact with you on an ongoing basis. So we'll have to work on that, Scott Kobe. That would be great. We have a great time. Those drafts move really fast. If you haven't heard any of our mock draft Mondays, we usually get in about 8 rounds in a 2-hour show with 4 drafters, each of them drafting a couple teams, 3 teams, and we get it done and move quickly. So I guess we'll call it a day here. Again, I'll be back next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and again Saturday we'll have a DFS show next week as well, streaming show. Whether it'll be Friday or Saturday to be determined, because I believe the conference championship weekends will only have Sunday games. So we'll be there. And again, throughout the rest of this month, we will be on the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Monday, 1:30. Oh, to seeing more scheduling for February for the radio program. So good enough for that. All right, everybody. Appreciate y'all coming. Look forward to seeing you again Wednesday. We'll see what happens in these great games this weekend. Hope you all win a ton of money in your DFS lineups. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.